Welcome to Inside Style. I'm your host, George Worrell, and thank you for tuning in today. I am excited to be here and to be talking about one of my favorite subjects. It's about change and our life's dreams. And there was something I read in a book called Change. The author's here today, and it states our life dream is to become one within oneself. I am delighted to introduce Dr. Larry Crenshaw, who is known as a dynamic professional expert with years of unprecedented experience in business counseling, leadership, marketing, mentoring, negotiating, problem-solving, sales, and acute ability to strategically guide projects through beginning to end. Dr. Larry Crenshaw, welcome to Inside Style, my friend.
George, thank you so much for inviting me over to Inside Style.
We caught up, and I wanted to have you on because part of lifestyle and part of fashion and all those other kinds of things is mental health and a journey, and you as a coach and all those kinds of things. I want to talk about that, and we'll get into your book, Change. But I didn't know that you were from California, San Diego.
Yes, so I'm from San Diego, which I always refer to as America's finest city. Mm-hmm. We have different experiences that you can indulge in any given day. So we have the beach, we have the canyons, and we have the mountains, and you can get to them relatively quickly, unlike the traffic in D.C.
But, there is a uniqueness about Californians. Like, I have friends, my friend Lenore is from California. There's a calmness about people. There's kind of a, like beach, like quiet, chill vibe about people from California. Do you identify with that? Or?
Although I've been away from California for most of my adult life, I would say that I am still a true Californian. Okay. I am still very much laid back and concerned about making my own experience one that I enjoy and ensuring that I don't impose any of my negative energy or anything on somebody else's experience, so they have the right to enjoy theirs as well.
Tell us a little bit about the foundation. And when I talk about the foundation, what we were talking about earlier about how we grew up, I told you I grew up in Atlantic City by the beach, but very family oriented. How was it for you growing up in California?
For me, growing up in California was very nice. I was able to be a child when it was time for me to be a child. And when it was time for me to be an adult, I was given the opportunity to really think about what I wanted to experience, and not have my parents or my grandparents impose their beliefs or their traditions, just shove them down my throat. So I'd like to say that I had a wonderful experience growing up.
What made you think about the military after, growing up in that kind of, and I read a little bit about it in your book, but tell us.
So I was an adult. I was over 20 years old. I'd finished school, but I lived at home.
Okay.
And living at home as an adult means that you follow the rules of the house.
And the regulations.
And the regulations.
Let's not leave that out of the black household. It's always the rules and the regulations. Go ahead.
And so I can recall a friend had joined the Army, and California has a huge naval presence. And so I decided that was what I wanted to do. It would enable me to travel and experience something different, and so that's what I did. I joined the Army.
How was it?
It was a very satisfying experience. I would say that I did have the opportunity to travel. I lived abroad in Egypt for a year. I, as many military people, I engaged in conflict. So I had that experience, and then I landed here in D.C. at the Pentagon, and so I would say that it was a good experience. It wasn't what I wanted to do lifelong, but it was something that I fulfilled, that I was interested in at that time in my development.
Was it fun? Did you realize that you were embarking on a journey?
You know, I think that when we're younger, well, for me, I didn't necessarily think through everything in the decision that I made in joining the military, because although I experienced conflict and I knew that that was part of what could be possible by joining the military, it wasn't something that I would have, if I would have really thought it out, that I would have said, hey, there's a big possibility that this could be a part of your experience. But I like to look at life like this, is that everything that we've experienced and everything that we've gone through makes us a better version of ourselves, because it gives us access to information and data, and we learn what we like and what we dislike. And so I would say that it was a great experience.
And what was next after the Pentagon?
After the Pentagon, I actually worked for a global spatial geological company for a short while, and then I spent several years working in telecommunications. So I was a director of strategic messaging for AT&T for 17 years, and at that same time, I went back to school and got my MBA, and then I went back and got my doctorate. And what became more clear to me is that as I became older, I became more interested in the human experience and how we go through life and how we move through life, and ensuring that people have the right tools to process and move forward.
And that's how you've navigated and journeyed into what you're doing now. And let's talk about that for a little bit, about the coaching, and then we'll get into your book. But happiness, is like this. How do you define happiness? Is it individual? Is it personal? What would you say about that term and how it applies?
Well, what I would say about happiness is that it is something that's very individualistically driven. What excites me is personal to me. What excites you is personal to you, and that's okay. And so I think that it's important for people to really think about what they believe, to think about what they want to experience, and to think about what they enjoy doing, and then focus on those things, and let George or whomever enjoy the experiences that they want to experience. So happiness for me is about awareness. It's about self-awareness and being aware of what makes you.
And happy. Or at least getting there, because I know for me, I'm not happy all the time, but I'm grateful.
Yeah.
And that's, gratitude circles back to that. Why do you think it's so important in many cases to have someone to coach and to advise when you don't know? That's when I was growing up or just in different careers, it never occurred to me. We used to call it mentors. If you were lucky, if you had somebody that would impart into you. And now we are just, it's a good thing, as Martha says, that we can get somebody like yourself to talk to, to kind of guide us. Let's talk about that coaching piece of what you do, and why do your clients come to you?
Yeah. My clients come to me for various reasons. They come because they're dealing with something mentally or physically that they'd like to overcome, that they'd like to move forward. They've probably defined goals before in the past and have been unable to achieve them. I intentionally chose to focus on coaching as opposed to on being a clinician and doing the clinical work.
What's the difference?
And the difference is this, is as a clinician, you diagnose people, and you are really focusing on sometimes things that were developmental that happened in the past. I want to work with people that are ready to move forward in the future. That doesn't mean that I turn away people that are and do need help in processing something that happened in their past. But I more intentionally wanted to work with people that said, hey, I'm good in multiple different areas of my life. It's just when I try to, let's say, become more physically fit, I have a challenge with developing myself with the processes of doing that and infusing that into my life. And so the difference is one is more focused on moving past something where they're really stuck, and the other is more positive focused.
Can you partner the two?
Yes, definitely.
So I can see my therapist and come and talk to you about my career, or some things that are hindering me, or my job, or
most definitely. So I am I'm working with people that have they're under medical under the care of a medical psychiatrist or psychologist, and I work with people that also in tandem see an actual therapist. So yes.
So let's get to this. I enjoyed this. Your book, Change: A Guide to Achieving Life's Goals. What inspired you to want to put pen to paper?
So what inspired me is that in completing my doctoral work, some of the things that I found is, especially for African Americans, social justice and the inequalities that we have in our community and among our culture sharing group lead us to places where we are less likely to achieve the goals that we desire or set out for ourselves. I also found that there was a lack of positive tools and resources, not to say that those tools and resources don't exist, but they don't exist in the abundance that they do for other culture sharing groups. And so I wanted to do something that added to the tools that were out there. I wanted to introduce something that was not me preaching to an audience of people, but me telling people as a academic and as a researcher, these are some things that I found that I think are important for us to consider when we are attempting a change or trying to reach any type of goal. And so that's really what what change was about and what it represented for me.
Is it easy to identify that we need to change? Many times I've seen in family and acceptance of how things are, and just not so much dealing with it, but just kind of living with it.
Yeah.
How does that, because that's a very powerful word for me, change. I always hear Tremaine Hawkins, Tremaine, a change has come over me. I'm not what I want to be, but I'm not what I used to be. But how do we identify in ourselves that there needs to be a change?
I think that's something that's very personal. I think it's personal to each person. I think that sometimes just because of our environment and because of the things that we're enjoying, we might want to stay where we are. But I think that as we get more information, as we are more socially active, as we see something different in others, then sometimes I think that's when we identify that we want to make a change. And I think that when we do identify that sometimes people are challenged in achieving those changes because they're still living in the space that they were in, and they still have all of those things in their environment, whether it's family influences or influences of friends that may differ from where they want to go and move forward to. And then you may have the friends that are reminding you that, oh, I know who you are.
Or you're hearing the same story over and over again. I also think, too, and you can talk about this if you, expand on, is that you have to have some type of desire.
Desire, yeah. It takes a desire.
And drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is drive and ambition something we all have, or we tap into it, or are there things that some people have and some people don't? What are your feelings about that?
Well, I think in studying the human brain, I think we all have the ability to ignite our the emotional or the rational part of our brain, which is the upper hemisphere of the brain. And when we excite and we start thinking in that higher thought zone, then that's when we find out that we have the ability, each and every one of us has the ability to do something different, to desire something more, and then to decide what work they're going to do in order to move into that new space that they're looking to do. But understanding that it takes work.
I work with returning citizens, people who are coming back from alcohol and drugs, on a fashion lifestyle platform. But I also know, as a person who is recovering with 29 years clean, coming up on 30, that it can be very easy to say, if I've been in trouble, or I have a record, or, society is against me, it's a lot of obstacles that, for me, being an African-American male, I've seen all my life. How do we encourage, or what are the tools that we give people, rather, if not they're returning citizens, or just, I'm in this job and I know I can do better, but I just can't seem to make a change. What are some tools, what are some things mentally that we can do to start that process? Yeah,
I think it takes a lot of self-awareness, like becoming aware with what your beliefs are and what your willingness to participate in any change. I can remember as a child, religion was a big influence in our lives, and you'd go to church and somebody say, well, you just pray about it. Well, prayer without work is really not going to do anything for you. And so understanding that, while you're using things like religion and spirituality, you also have to have that awareness of self, and you also have to have that desire and a support system that will help you to move forward. Somebody that's there reminding you, hey, George, you made a decision. I thought, not telling you what to do, but more importantly, just being there when you need somebody to talk to, when you need that extra.
Those tools to help you in your decision, I think, is paramount. And what we were talking about earlier about self-worth and self-value, many things that I believe is that everything starts in here, in your head. And many of the things throughout my career I had to take. They weren't given to me. And it wasn't taking it from somebody else. It was garnering my talent in the things that I thought and soon after knew that I was good with, to create my own platform. That's why I'm such an advocate of social media, because you don't necessarily need someone to place you somewhere or to see your talent. You can directly go to your fan base or create and let people see you. What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, I love that. I once had a professor in my doctoral program who sent back a paper with a note on it, and he said, I understand what these authors are saying. Tell me what you say. And what I gathered from that is it's important for us to get to the point where we can create the narrative of who we are and what makes us successful. When we define our success. When we take ownership of ourselves, then we're more likely, I think, to be able to achieve our goals. When we highlight what it is that we want to achieve, then we're not comparing. I like to say that comparison is the biggest ripoff. It's going to steal you of all of the joy that you will have in doing the things that you desire to do.
So you can be, yeah. So I always say that I fried great chicken, really good chicken that my grandmother taught me how to make. Yeah. But I can't fry it like she fried it. Good. And if there's two wings, one wing is hers and one wing is mine, I guarantee you're going to eat and love her wing. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? Just being in that category of that being, I don't have to compete or I don't have to, my self-worth. How does faith play in your personal life and what you do?
Yeah. I think my faith is something that's very important. I've always, been Christian in the Baptist church. Sometimes I'm more active than others, but it's always something that's there. Mm-hmm. It's always something that if the other tools that I'm using to have that balance and that harmony in my life, if it's something like physical fitness, or if it is listening to music, or if it's socializing, if I'm doing all those things and my faith, if I'm not listening to gospel music, if I'm not attending church, if I'm not, taking time to pray or to read a scripture every now and then, I recognize that there's something that is imbalanced in my life. And I think that sometimes we get to a point where it's important to have that harmony of life. So faith, for me, plays a major role in my daily.
Yeah. I know that it's personal for me. Mm-hmm. It's personal because I don't always agree with everything that's said or in tradition. Mm-hmm. And that as I got older, I had to navigate what was right in the belief system that was right for me. Mm-hmm. I also believe that the belief system and faith that my parents had were not like their parents. Mm-hmm. And it's the same for me. It's so very, very personal. But it is very strong. Yeah. It's something that when I'm alone and I can't call you, or I can't call my mom, or I can't call my best friend, it's something that I can reach out to for solace. Yeah. And it sustains me until my inner strength matches it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
But you don't realize those things. So many things come with age. And I love it. I love getting older. And talking about these things. What does Larry Crenshaw, Dr. Larry Crenshaw, do on his time off to revigorate yourself, or just on your off time? What do you do that's
I think that I've gotten to a point in my life where I have a routine. Okay. And part of my daily routine is focused on enjoying every moment of that day. So typically I start off my day with coffee. Okay. I love coffee. Maybe I'll have some orange juice. But then I immediately go down to my gym and I work out for an hour and a half. And then at the same time, I'll be checking email, and if I need to take a call, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. But really starting my day off with exercise, something that I love and enjoy, and then moving through the day from that. Going to my office on the weekdays and on the weekends, just taking time to have time with my family and my dogs, and enjoy myself.
What, as we wrap up, we could talk about this all day, and you got to come back with Change, a Guide to Achieving Life Goals. what are a few things that you would impart to our listeners to start with?
Yeah.
Finding someone, if they're in this area, maybe they can reach out to you. You'll give us that information. But what are a few, one or two things that you want to emphasize in the book?
Yeah, the one thing that I would like to emphasize about change is that it's not about me. And, although there is a part of the story that talks about my experience, it's intentionally there because I think that in each and every one of us, there is a story where we develop some skill, we develop some strength. And many times when we're going through a struggle, we might recall that story and we say, oh, I've gone through that, so I can do so much more. That what I'm going through now does not mean so much. So I share that as a igniter to how someone should think about how they're going to receive the remaining pages of the book. And then I ask them throughout each chapter to think about and envision what's important for them, whether it's their belief system, whether it is the system of support that they have, to really call upon all those things and then to determine what they're going to do in order to move forward. What are they going to commit to? Are they going to try to take the short route, or are they willing to really?
Is there a short route?
Oh, there's short routes.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes when we take the short route, then it's not. We don't walk into a change that's sustainable.
Okay.
We can't sustain it because we didn't really do the work to get there. But it's a very personal, short book. But it's very powerful, I think.
I enjoyed it. I totally enjoyed it. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on Inside Style. How can our listeners get in touch with your social media?
Yeah, so my office is www.evoke101.com. And then I'm on Facebook and on Instagram.
Okay.
Under Evoke 101.
Are you on LinkedIn too?
I believe I'm on LinkedIn.
I think so, yeah. I think I saw your profile on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. I think you definitely got to come back.
George, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And my name is George Worrell, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. And remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin. This is George Worrell. We will see you next time.